we're going to try to get through this one quick as we can. I was walking past the farmer's market and I saw a sign that said duck, eggs. I thought, that's an unnecessary comma. Then it hit me. All right. So incident management is basically a system that's in place for mass casualty incidents. In a mass casualty incident, we're talking about 3 or more patients, and you don't have enough resources, right? You don't have enough resources with you at the time. You can have 3 patients in a minor wreck, whatever, but 3 or more patients and not enough resources to do what you need to do. So we have this incident command system that kind of builds up and helps us deal with that. Okay. NIMS, you can take classes for free through FEMA if you want. If you want to build up some certifications for your resume, there's NIMS 100, 200, 300, 400, 700, 800, whatever. You can take them for free, get your certificates, and it's kind of a good thing to know anyway when you go in there. But essentially what it does is it scales up, right? If we have a tornado come through the city and hit, a business and there's 20 people injured, right? Or like the stuff in the cities, right? Or even, at a national level, it scales up to help deal with these big incidents, okay? So basically it's a system that enables all of the government entities to work together. If you join an EMS or fire service, you're going to have to take a couple of those NIMS courses. And basically they make you do that so that everybody can work together. Everybody's on the same page. That makes sense. There is also, I know city council people have to get involved too, and you make partnerships with that. So it's flexible enough. It scales up. Every incident has an incident command, whether you know it or not. And then it scales up from there. So basically it standardized the process. We're all on the same page. Okay, NIMS component, huge part. Probably the 2 biggest parts are this and that. Okay, preparedness, so we know in advance how this is going to work, and command, so when we show up on scene, boom, I'm the incident command. This person's going to be ops. This, and you scale from there. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, incident command, IMS, ICS, the same thing. Okay, what are our goals? Our goals are to stay safe. Well, achieve our goals. Right? We want our biggest priority to stay safe. We want to achieve our goals, and we want to use resources efficiently, so we don't have people just standing around doing nothing or wasting time and money. Right? Freelancing. It's a big no-no. EMS, not so much. There's only 3 of us. We do fire departments. We show up on scene, and there's 20 guys. Everybody's got a job, right? And you don't want to freelance. You do what you're assigned to do. Freelancing is bad. Freelancing is when people get hurt, so we try to avoid that on big incidents. Okay, some big buzzwords I got to do with my good old officer test. Span of control and unity command. Span of control, you should have no more than 7 subordinates. If you have more than 7 people that report to you, it's hard to keep track. Okay, and unity command, each person should report to 1 supervisor. If you have 2 bosses, things get crossed up. So it's kind of the point. We divide into sections, branches, divisions, and groups. Groups being the smallest, right? Sections are the biggest. And as the scene develops, this scales up. Okay, the fire department rolls up on scene, and there's 8 guys in the first 2 trucks. That's your start, right? You have an incident command. You might have ops, and then you go up from there as people show up and this grows, right? So the 4 main points: ops, planning, logistics, and finance. Those are your 4 main divisions, and then they break down, or your 4 main sectors. Then you break down, right, into sections, branches, divisions, and groups. Okay, so your sectors or sections are those 4. Okay, the main roles: command, that's the big one. Finance is about the money. Logistics is about what's happening. How do we make plans, right? Or how do we get the materials on scene we need? Operations is actually, that's the big one. They're dealing with it. Those are the people fighting the fire, searching for victims, whatever. Planning is how are we going to approach this? And command staff, that's like communications, public information, that type of stuff. So command, every incident has an incident command. Okay, car accidents, fires, whatever. There's going to be an incident command. Usually, it's fire chief, right? And it's important that people know who the incident command is, so we know who to report to, ultimately, right? May or may not transfer command depending on what you got. Okay, it all depends on what the incident is. But for the most part, out here in the sticks, out here in rural areas, it is incident command is usually the fire chief. They're kind of the well-rounded person, and there aren't enough of us to actually take command. So sorry about the interruption. Operations, ops, basically they take care of dealing with the incident, right? Tactical operations. I wouldn't say it's very large or complex, but anything where you've got multiple crews working at the same time, whether it's a large accident, multiple victims in an accident, or a house fire or something like that, there's operations. Okay, logistics, they're responsible for getting the stuff, right? That's their job, is getting the equipment, what we need there. Oops, it's not going to move for me here. Come on. Planning, they plan, right? Develops an action plan. Finance, they're charged for documenting expenditures, making sure that things are. When you get to the finance part, you're talking about large incidents over days. We're looking at paying everything. So command staff, these are kind of the special people safety officer. They do just that. They're probably the most powerful person at the scene, because if they see something unsafe, they can shut everything down. So that's their job, is just pure safety. Public information officer, they're in charge of communications with media and everybody else. And liaison officer, if you've got fire and EMS and law enforcement and rescue all on scene, the liaison officer is the person that communicates among the other agencies. Okay? So communication is huge at a scene, right? Communication is huge in life in general, but on a incident scene, it's huge. Okay, so that's why our radios have tons of channels. We can set aside talk groups, channels, whatever, to communicate with each other. So we want to talk, if possible, talk face to face. That's always best, but not always possible on a scene, right? So we want to be able to talk on the radio. So when you get there, what happens? You check in with incident command or staging, right? You might be sent to stage down the street. You need to check in when you get there. Report to your supervisor. Remember, you have one supervisor, right? You got to find that person, report to them. Okay, tell them what you're doing. They're going to tell you what to do. You're going to tell them when it's done, that type of thing. And then at the end, they demobilize, right? You do your job while you're there, and then at the end, they say, okay, we don't need you to go home. Okay. So if you're just a little cog in the wheel, it makes it very simple. Less thinking, less decision making is best. So EMS response. Okay, we should have plans. And we do. And if you think about a lot of this, what happens if a bunch of people get sick or injured at the same time? How are we going to transport them? Where are they going to go? Where can we shelter people that aren't injured? Right? How do we find resources, etc.? That's all pre-planning, which helps in event of an incident. We have a pre-planned binder down at the ambulance shed for what happens in terms of mass incidents here. So we like to plan. So you show up on scene, and this is always, right? When you look at our test stuff, okay? How many people do I have? Do I need help? Right? What's the nature of the incident? What's going on? That's what we ask ourselves. What do I have? What do I need? Okay, and now what do I do? So those are what we ask ourselves every scene, right? What's wrong with this patient? Okay, do I need help? Okay, what are we going to go after? What are we going to do here? So establish command. The most senior official or the highest ranking person on the scene takes command instantly when somebody gets on there. You got to do that right away. That person is now in charge, right? And we order. Here's what I got. Here's what I need. Okay, and we went through that with this officer class. You show up on scene. I'm working structured fire. I'm going to need mutual aid from Spicer and Belgrade, and 4501 will be command. Right? Whatever. You do that right away. When you get started, makes everything else easier, makes everything else fall into place so they know who to respond to, or who dispatch knows who to respond to. So communications, whenever possible, talk face to face. Okay, you got done. You cleared this this area of patients. You go report to your supervisor. Hey, sector A is clear. Now, what do you want us to do? Right? Speak concisely and quickly on the radio. You don't need to tell a story, right? You don't need to talk. I like to talk, right? In here in class, it's not how I talk on the radio. On the radio, it's quick, concise, clear, and move on. Okay, so medical branch. Right? What do we do at the medical branch? We triage, treat, transport, right? That's what we do anyway. We treat and transport. The thing we add is triage in a mass casualty. Triage, we've talked about a little bit in the past, is figuring out who gets treatment first. Okay, there's a lot to it. We'll spend a little time on triage also. But triage is kind of, it's tough. Okay, but our job is to figure out who we can help and get them help. Okay, and who we can't help, and we have to move on. Okay, so take a minute, pause your video, and read these. Okay, this is kind of what we do: triage, treat, and transport. Okay, we're going to establish a treatment area. We're going to establish a triage area. We're going to establish a morgue area. Unfortunately, it's part of the deal. Okay, we're going to figure out where everybody's going. Right. So, right, we need to know where everybody's going, how much room Wilmer has, how much room Paynesville has, how much room Benson Hospital has, how many choppers do we have to get people down to the cities, etc. So triage supervisor in charge of triage, right? Every patient shows up, we go, okay, here's the patient, here's a basic assessment, right? And then we say we coordinate them according to color: black, red, yellow, green, and then we keep going like that. We don't really treat anybody beyond very basics. We don't treat anybody until all patients have been triaged. They might get a tourniquet, they might get oxygen if we have it, but that's it. Treatment supervisor. Now, once we figure out, okay, we're going to treat the reds and the yellows, we start treating them. We have a supervisor for that. Okay, transport. We're going to have somebody saying, ABC ambulance is taking patient 7 to Rice Hospital. QRS ambulance is taking patient 12 to Paynesville Hospital, right? They're going to be in charge of coordinating the transport and where people are going, right? Patients get numbers in triage, and then we track them according to that number. Patient 7 has a partially amputated left arm, and they flew on the chopper to north. That's recorded so we know where they go. Okay, staging. When we show up, everybody can't just cram on the scene. There has to be an area where everybody parks and, okay, you 3 guys are going to go here. You 7 guys are going to go over to the west side. They can direct them. Okay, so staging areas away from the scene. And there's obviously got to be somebody in charge of that, right? So that you stage first, and then they give you your assignment and send you to where you go. Okay, physicians, docs show up. To be honest, sometimes docs, depending on what they do, sometimes doctors on scene make things difficult, more difficult. Okay, but hopefully, if they're emergency, they can help you out with what you're doing. Especially if they're trained in emergency medicine, then it's definitely an asset. Okay, basically they up our game, right? They make us able to do more, help more, treat more. Rehab is to treat the responders. Okay, rehab is when you've got people that have been working hard. We want to get them fluids, get them either warmed up or cooled down depending on the temperature outside, check their vitals, make sure that they're okay. So establishing rehab is to help keep our responders working, right? So that's what rehab is when you hear that mentioned. Okay, extrication and special rescue. A lot of times under EMS, if we have to find patients under the rubble and treat them, a lot of times that'll come under EMS. Okay, and morgue supervisor. Nobody wants to do that, but it is part of what we do. Okay, you're going to take these patients, put them somewhere out of view, secure area, and hold them there with whatever identification, whatever you have, whatever information you have, until they can be dealt with by medical examiners, coroners, etc.